Hi again, Felipe here, talking about the prototypes I'm working in the current phase of my research project. And this second video is about EI, or the evaluation interface. I'm again using the Miro board that I have prepared for the last week of the Reuse City Lab in April, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. There are some comments, as I mentioned in the other video, there are some comments that were added by one or more participants, but I will not focus on those comments for the time being. So EI is technology, both hardware and software, to increase the ability to reuse products and materials. It allows different types of users to access information in the Universal Registry of Things. As I'm sure you are aware, there is no Universal Registry of Things at the moment. So in that sense, EI is so far a speculative object or a speculative kind of technology, which I hope to explore in the coming months and hopefully put this prototype into a form that is recognized and that can work. So what I'm doing at the moment is to discuss a little further the idea of EI, and I will ask you to focus on 4 different aspects of it, as you may have read in the form that I sent you. One of them is expected behavior, the second is user profiles, the third is form and scale, and finally I want to explore different kinds of scenarios involved with this kind of technology. So what the expected behavior I have for the prototype that I'm working on. So I'm currently using the little knowledge I have acquired recently about open hardware to create a functional prototype that will, I must confess, simulate to recognize different objects and display or deliver information about how those objects can be reused. So the expected behavior that I have is that whenever I put an object in the mat, it's a cutting mat, you know, those workshop types of cutting mats, the proximity sensor will turn on the LCD screen, and then a welcome screen is shown. In this screen there's a button to start EI. When I click the button, a camera is turned on and shows an image of what object is in the mat. Then there's an overlay message saying scanning for things, or scanning for objects, or scanning for materials. Once the object is recognized, and again, I'm simulating that the EI recognizes the object by its image, or a correspondence of images in the fictional Universal Registry of Things. But for prototyping purposes, I'll be using NFC or RFID. And then once an object is recognized, a message is shown in the screen. And optionally, I would sound a notification, but that would need also a speaker to be added to the prototype. In the case A, it's a known object, and then there's a message saying object that was found on the database, and buttons on the screen will allow the user to choose to see information about what the object is, and then would navigate to a page with the description of the object, with video, images, text, or other info. Or the user can opt to see what can they do with this object, and then would navigate to a page with information about repair, upcycling, recirculation, second-hand market value. And then I think one of the things that I keep being my attention keeps being drawn to is that we should incorporate stories, not only objective information about how to reuse, but also personal stories that people may have about different kinds of objects, and because this is part of the social learning and creative exploration of what can be done with objects. Is not only about the physical properties, but also what people in the ways in which people engage with those objects. In the case that the object is not recognized, it's detected but not identified, an overlay message will say that the object is not yet on the database, and then allow the user to add this object to the Universal Registry of Things. Once the user clicks that option, a page with a form, I don't know exactly the best way to do that, but possibly a page with a form will be shown in which the user can add information about that specific object. So the question I have for you is, am I missing any steps? Is any of those steps irrelevant and I should remove them? Do you have any other comments about these objects? There is another scenario, but I think I'll be exploring that later. So let's keep it at that for the moment. The second aspect I want to draw your attention to is about user profiles. So who are the people who would be engaging with the Universal Registry of Things through these kinds of technologies? Not only the workbench scenario that I have just described, but also a mobile phone option or a kiosk, ATM-sized machine placed in the city. These are some of the user profiles that I have explored. One of them is citizen or household, be it with excess materials or objects in need of repair, or willing to acquire goods and materials from other people or organizations. Another user profile would be community initiatives, people active in community initiatives. Another is an artist or a craftsperson looking for materials. Organizations in need of affordable goods, be it non-profits, schools, community centers, or businesses. Second-hand shops or marketplaces that could make use of EI for their everyday activities. Professional repair people, or local authority or municipality, or people involved with waste management in local authorities or municipalities. Who am I missing in this scenario? What kinds of user profiles I should take into account that are not listed here? And what do you know about any or each of these user profiles? Can you tell me stories? Can you tell me things that you know about some of these user profiles? Please do by filling the form that I sent. Then EI on different scales. As I have just mentioned, I would see at least 3 different scales and forms for EI to be developed. One of them, I think, is the one that most people think of, is a smartphone app that would allow me to point to an object, identify it, and then access information about that object. The second, which is the one that I am exploring as a prototype for my research, is this workbench machine for repair shops, makerspaces, or transformation labs. That is the third video I'll be making in a moment. And community repair initiatives. And I can also think that there would be a possibility of a larger machine to be put in reuse centers or scrap shops or similar organizations or similar spaces in the city. So it would be much more like an ATM-sized or a larger-sized machine to which people could bring objects, and those objects would be assessed by the machine. What are the advantages and the constraints of each scale? How do they compare to other tools and equipment that exist or that could exist? So these are the questions to you, and please send me your comments in the form. And then finally, here are some of the scenarios. I just realized that I should perhaps have started through with this one, but yeah, never mind. So this is the current prototype. I'm sorry for this sketch, which is awful, but it's basically a workbench machine that has a cutting mat, an NFC sensor, an ultrasonic proximity sensor, a touch screen with a display, a Raspberry Pi that processes all these interactions, and then a camera. And I'm using it in an articulated arm because I had one of these already with lenses and a LED light. And the idea is that over this on this cutting mat, objects are placed and then recognized, and information about them is displayed in this touchscreen. But then again, this is the current prototype. It has this articulated arm, the NFC sensor. I'm using actually Arduino connected to the Raspberry Pi. I could connect directly to the Raspberry Pi, but then it would give me, it would require me to do some more tweaking and work with permissions, which I'm not planning to do at the moment. A touch screen and the Raspberry Pi serving a local website. I'm using Node-RED to connect all of those data entry and display possibilities. But yeah, so the NFC tag is added to pre-selected products, and these products are placed in the mat and then recognized, and information about these products is shown in the screen. I'm also looking forward, I'm also expecting to have contributions on the shape and form of this. So if you want to contribute with design, please let me know. We can discuss how best to incorporate different kinds of contributions for that. And as you see, there is documentation about the way I'm doing it. There's also this possibility of a computer vision alternative, which I would pursue had I more time to explore this prototype. Then instead of using NFC, I would work with computer vision to recognize different kinds of objects, and possibly to explore also other ways to identify objects, be it through color, but also a general shape, and barcodes and QR codes that sometimes are placed in objects by default. And there's a question here whether teachable machine, that is this AI or machine learning tech, maybe that can be used for that, but I'm not sure I'll be going into that direction. And then I think the third scenario would be to think of all of this, think of this machine as a kind of reuse assistant that would have all those possibilities, but would also interact by voice with the user. And that, I guess, can have a connection to examples that you see in science fiction. For instance, I remember, I don't know, maybe Jarvis on Iron Man, or R2-D2 on Star Wars, and some other. Maybe you have more examples of fictional assistants that help users repair stuff or reuse materials. So this is the one that I'm exploring. You may have seen this unicorn is part of my research background. I found it in the streets in Dundee. I have a blog post about it. But yeah, so these are the 4 aspects of AI that I would like to have your feedback on. So please fill the form that I sent, and maybe I can incorporate your comments in my research. Thanks a lot.